let's move a little bit before program. I think that's great to earn a little time to the first part. This is a lecture that we're going to have, and I've entitled it, based on the content, Dissemination and Communication. It is a lecture that will be given to us by Karima BenSalah. Karima BenSalah is a journalist and a media expert. She's currently working as the Senior Communication Officer in the Costa Association. Her primary responsibility as such is to develop and implement a pan-European media strategy to support the COST actions in their communication and dissemination activities. And her objective is to increase media presence and awareness about the COST program in Europe and support the actions. I can testify that this role is successfully fulfilled. Karima has been helping us very much with all our communications aspects. She has given me a lot of training, very helpful training to learn how to do this. And well, it is a great honor to have her here today among us. So Karima, thank you.
Hello everyone, and thank you, Jorge, for this nice introduction. And I'm really glad to see faces, because in the current context, us like you, we are all stuck at home or work, but completely disconnected with the humankind and working remotely. So I'm really happy to be here. And I've been asked to just give you a little a short introduction on dissemination and communication, not really to lecture you, because I'm pretty sure you are all experts, but it's really just to remind ourselves what is dissemination and what is communication, in order to really set the next steps you want to approach and use to push your communication strategy. So I'm going to share my screen. Where is... Well, here we go, the little... Can you see it?
Yes, yes.
Is this better?
Yeah.
Okay. So as I said, thank you for inviting me. So basically, I will start by this little link that I really like. Why communication is important. So nothing in science has any value to society if it's not communicated, and scientists are beginning to learn their social obligations. Why I picked up this quote, we know there are many quotes and many people, inspiring people from the past and up to the present, but because first, she's a lady. It's something I always like to highlight, and second, because it's dating back from the 50s, and as you all know, in those days we didn't have the technology, the platforms, the channels, the facilities we do have nowadays when we want to communicate or share knowledge or share anything with the other. So that's why I've picked up this really nice quote, in order to inspire us and to move to the next step, which is why. The question we all need to ask ourselves aloud is, why communicate? Who cares? Is it relevant that you want to communicate about your actions, network? So first, you want to reach audiences, community, research community, just peer-to-peer among yourselves, or move to other audiences, such as local, national authorities that will benefit from your actions, results, and work. Opinion formers, policymakers, funders. So there's multitude of audiences. To give visibility to your action and increase it during the lifetime of your action, to stimulate and justify funding. We have seen the cases of following the results, and after 4 years of great work and outcomes, it led to further research, to further funding, to further grants to carry on. The value, I think the beauty belonging to a cost action is the fact that you all come from different disciplines and from different countries. Remember that. It gives a great legitimacy to your work and what you'll be and the results of that work. And of course, also involving younger researchers. That is also the beauty of belonging to a cost actions network such as yours. And of course, to spark new collaborations and spread networks. So before we move to the next step, I always like to give this quick reminder. Dissemination versus communication doesn't mean, this is quite obvious, they are interlinked and they work together. But sometimes I've seen in my experience at COST, it's not always clear for some people. I'm not blaming anyone. I just like to bring back this aloud, because then it clicks and tells people, oh, yes, indeed. Dissemination targets specific audiences to bring knowledge and expertise on a topic. So in your case, you've been doing this already. From day one, you've been meeting, discussing, collecting, gathering information, and that stayed within your community. While communication engage with a much wider audience. It's obvious, of course, but successful communication requires a clear language, an attractive scientific subject with results that can catch the attention. That's when you succeed in your communication. It's when the language you will use is understandable for anyone, research community, etc., there's no doubt, but also for the much layman, wider people in the street. If you use the word discourse, narrative in the lady working in the street, it's obvious to you, but not to her. So I always like to remind that. And of course, you need to adapt that message according to the audience. That's really relevant. And of course, will create public awareness and enhance the visibility of your project results, consortium, and research program. So this is a little summary to wrap up, because then it gives you a clearer view. Dissemination communication, the objectives. Well, it's of course obvious, public disclosure of results, and it's promoting the project and its results. Even if you don't have evidence-based observation ready to be shared, by communicating about your project, telling who you are, where you're going, and after 4 years what you'll be doing, that's communication. So the audience, again, target groups, your research community, authorities, stakeholders, policymakers, that's more in the dissemination approach. And then you move to general public and user, civil society, mass media. Bear in mind that policymakers, local authorities, some communities, that can be in that column too, because some of them do not understand. So that's also something to reflect and think about. And of course, the language, scientific specialist language versus non-scientific language. And the channels, you'll be like meeting, organizing conferences, traveling before the pandemic, university. So that's pretty obvious. But now, if you shift to wider audience, targeted communities you want to engage with, so it means you're going to use different channels, like the classic one, television, web, radio, newspaper, magazine, etc., etc. And nowadays we have a multitude of platforms to be used for that purpose. So the impact. In the dissemination, you make sure the scientific results created during the project are being published, disseminated among the research community. So to clarify, you will use as tips and tricks and tools, you'll publish through your scientific or specialized publication, architecture, urbanism reviews. You will give oral presentation, like what you'll be working on, where you are at the moment, presentation, poster. That's all pretty obvious. You are doing it already. While communication, this is slightly different because you have your actions logo, which is really nice. You're using templates and leaflet templates like today's presentation. Website is a window. It's not really a dissemination tool. It's more a communication tool where all your dissemination work will be stored in different spaces, but also think of a more accessible, wider public. A website is really the window of your activity for the next few years, but also think it doesn't mean it should stop after 4 years. And it's also a way to attract audience. The results you've been, the previous webinar you've been organizing, publication that we're going through, that's really relevant. And of course, infographics. As we say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. An infographic explains these kind of things really well. So if you have an idea how to illustrate an aspect of your work that can be translated into an infographic, it's great, it works, people click. Of course, there are video animations. I always recommend, because when you look at the new generation, for instance, they have the world in their pocket with their mobile phone. So that's a tool, that's a channel where you can disseminate and you can communicate a lot of information according to the audiences you want to engage with. And of course, the press releases, conferences, social media, as I said earlier. Think of Instagram as well, not only Twitter or LinkedIn or Facebook. That's Instagram. It uses really the visuals, and it's a really great platform to share when you're ready to share something that you really want to share with a specific audience. So basically have a toolbox, use all these things, because it will help you to identify the different channels, the different goals, the different path you want to reach, to engage. And it will foster, of course, the identification of the project and create an external brand awareness. So today, as I said, we live in an over-connected world, and having a communication strategy only using traditional means of communication is no longer enough. That's the old days. Now we miss valuable opportunities to engage with wide audiences, and there are multiple. In your case, as I read in your MOU and in different places of your website, you have citizens, academia, institutions. That comes up very often. Citizen, even citizen, you need to clarify who among the citizens. Academia, who among the academia? Institutions, who? So have your columns, have your ticks, because then according to when you're ready, the approach you want to engage with, it is clearer. It means you need to integrate the digital factor to engage with these audiences. And as I said, it's at the heart of all our interactions and should be taken into account in your next move, because we talk a lot now in smart cities, connected cities. You have nowadays all these cycling, the whole environment of a city has changed and is under a huge transformation. So science is no longer confined in laboratories, but being integrated in society and helped by effective communication. So you really need to make a plan, and a strategy is a plan of actions designated to achieve a goal. That's a very simple, basic definition, but it will definitely help. So what is your strategy? You kicked off in 2019. So at the moment, you've been gathering, collecting all these very useful information, data, evidence-based. So what do you want to communicate at this stage? So adapt the narrative, the discourse according to the audience. I checked, there are so many synonyms around discourse. Discourse is more academic. But for the people in the street, they will click with chat, dialogue, conversation, exchange, discuss. So that's also something to take into account. Tell the story now using common language, the language they click. So engage a conversation on new conceptions in the built environment of cities. And then engaging with targeted audience to predefine according to your goals. So who is your target audience, as I said previously, among the citizens, among the academia, among the institutions, and how you will meet your goals and objectives. And of course, the timeline. When is it appropriate? Obviously, you've been working, reflecting, collecting, discussing. So that's great. But you ask yourself already today, so what you will communicate and when, according to the audiences. So writing urban places departs from two main ideas. That's what I read in your MOU. Investigate how people experience the urban place they use or inhabit. And urban stories and culture can be shared and raised to urban architectural strategies. As I said, I'm going to give you just a little example of my personal experience. I live in Brussels. I was born in Brussels. I grew up in the EU quarter. When I finished university, I moved to London. I worked there for about nearly 10 years. And when I got back, the area where I was born in the EU quarter has been completely destroyed. I couldn't recognize the quarter where I grew up. And I saw all these huge buildings with all these huge esplanades. And I thought, where are all the people who used to live here? The little local cinema, the little shop, it has completely disappeared. I'm not blaming, that's not the point of my little personal experience I want to share. But what I have noticed by knocking on doors and asking people, they have created a little committee where they are in permanent discussion with the local authorities, saying we need to recreate the village spirit we used to have, taking into account all this huge urban transformation, because they've picked that place, that part of Brussels, creating all these huge institutions building. And when you move there at weekends, there was nothing going on. It was pretty depressive. And now there's a kind of new urban, new culture that has evolved and raised in that area for the last 10 years, which is really nice. But just to give you an idea, that's the kind of stories you can easily pick up from the many people you have met and all based on your observations, that you can easily share to make the others click. That's just an example. So it's time to tell a story by shifting from what you've been doing so far to communication, and of course exploit the results to move forward with new approaches and new perspective. So stories to better understand communities in European cities and challenges faced by cities, living within them currently and towards the future. So we all live in a constant transformation. Based on your observation, it's time to engage the conversation related to urban narrative. And as I've, for instance, shared my personal experience, but I'm pretty sure you'll have many other you can use to share. So the final touch is I always like that, because it really illustrates people do not realize that there's a lot of work from your part that at the end of the day end up in the street, but people do not realize. So I really like that little blink because it really illustrates that you are collecting, gathering, looking in the past, sometimes for centuries, how it evolves, how the city's urbanization has changed. And now, based on today's and looking towards the future, it's really, really important to have that in mind. And of course, through Jorge, we can stay in touch. And you can, of course, find a lot of information. I've based my presentation, of course, on the European Commission website and funders and tenders opportunity, but that's very theoretical. Voila. And if you have any questions, of course, you can do not hesitate.
Karima, so many thanks. I mean, this is not only great, but absolutely opportune for the moment we are in. I don't know if there's any other comments from the colleagues of the action, but I really, really want to thank you for this. This is really illuminating at the moment we're in, especially.
Thank you.
Would someone else like to comment briefly, to say something to Karima? Yeah.
Yeah, Karima, thank you so much for your presentation. I think it was indeed very, very clear and very appropriate at this moment in our action after 2 years when we're moving to a next phase and think how all this knowledge that we're gathering, that we're getting to know through the big network that we're having with all its all the expertise that we have gathered. What is the next step? How can we actually engage with these communities? How can we actually work with these cities? So it's a perfect moment, and I want to thank you also for linking your presentation quite directly to our action and to the idea of urban stories and the questions about the European city, because I think maybe especially in our kind of action where we're thinking of stories and how people give meaning to their environment, how they appropriate it, how different groups live together, then this notion of communication and how we communicate our knowledge and exchange with local actors, with people who can actually make a change, that's very, very crucial. So thank you so much for your very insightful talk.
Thank you.
Yeah, and spot on also with your personal story. That's the kind of thing we're really looking at, you know, the lived experiences of people in their daily life regarding the built environment.